So Tessa, over to me then, yeah?
Yep.
So good afternoon, everybody, and this is the welcome. I'm Brian Horton. I'm one of the exec board members at Kent Housing Group, and have been involved in the original rural protocol through to the most recent work over too many years to mention, really. We're enormously grateful for all of you taking the time today to join us. And it's really great to see people from such a wide range of organisation and interest represented. Rural housing is a particular priority to us in Kent Housing Group, and all the partner organisations that are represented here and that have been involved in the work. I think that I often tell a little anecdote about if you pitch up to a parish council and say you want to build new homes in their village, the binary response often is no thank you, go away. But if you start asking the questions, things like, would you like your pub to stay open? Would you like your school to stay open? Would you like your parents to be able to live in the village? Kind of get the idea. And often the answer to those questions is yes, yes, and yes. And the only way really to achieve that, amongst other things, is to bring forward well-planned, attractive, mixed tenure, often homes that respond to local need. And the piece of work we've done focusing on affordable housing and the wider opportunities to bring housing forward, hopefully is a useful guide and a way that can enable all of you to be part of that want to be part of bringing new homes forward. Really grateful, as I say, to all of you being here. Kent Housing Group is keen. We pitch ourselves as the voice of housing in Kent. And having events like this and communicating that wider voice is a key part of what we do. And we represent a broad range of interests as well, from the local authorities, housing associations, the broader sector of people involved in delivery of housing. And at this point, I was asked to mention Rural Housing Week. So we've timed this to be part of a broader range of activities and promotion for rural housing. And hopefully, as I say, all of you will find this useful and be part of going back to your own communities and making a difference. And at that point, I'm absolutely delighted to hand over to Emma Bartlett, who chairs KHG's housing strategy group, and is also involved housing at Cambridge City Council. So over to you.
Hello everyone. As Brian said, I'm Emma Bartlett, work for Canterbury City Council, and I'll be chairing this session. Just to let you know, my computer doesn't really like Teams, so if I drop out, my colleague Tessa will help me out. So don't be surprised if someone suddenly takes over. Just if you could be kind enough to put yourselves on mute, just to prevent any feedback as we go through the session. And without further ado, I think we'd like to get started. So over to Rosemary Selling, the Rural Housing Enabler, who will be talking about local need housing and identifying need.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Thank you for your introduction, and to Brian as well. If you just bear with me, I'll just share my screen with you and we can crack on, hopefully, and talk about, oops. Sorry, let me go back to the beginning. And talk about local needs affordable housing. So for those of you that haven't met me before, I'm Rosemary Selling. I work for Action with Communities in Rural Kent. As I say, I'm the Rural Housing Enabler. So I'm going to talk to you about a few different things to do with affordable housing, and maybe focusing on how you can bring affordable housing to your parish. And talking a little bit about housing needs surveys as well. So as we all know, many people cannot afford to buy a property on the open market or to afford to rent privately. I think it's becoming increasingly apparent through the news and through all the information that we're taking on at the moment that the gap between rural house prices and local wages continue to widen. Looking more recently, I think this is really becoming magnified. You know, interest rates are rising, the cost of living is increasing, and therefore that's making the struggle to find local affordable housing very difficult for very many people, including young people, families, key workers, and especially older people in our rural communities too. Sometimes they get forgotten or a little bit left behind, but we should include those too. Brian at the beginning alluded to some of the benefits of providing local needs affordable housing. They are many, wide and varied, and I think asking those questions is really, really important. A lot of the questions about keeping schools open, keeping shops open are very, very relevant. But also local needs affordable housing provides some stability for our social networks, supporting businesses in the rural economy, but most especially providing affordable homes for people with a real housing need. And we see this day in and day out on the housing need forms that we receive, where people are in need of housing and want to stay in the local area and want their children to continue at school or want to be able to support their elderly relatives or other people in the parish in need of their help. So local needs affordable housing is commonly delivered through rural exception sites. It's really important to say that these are small sites. They're commonly suitable for 8 to 10 properties, and they're held in perpetuity as affordable housing in the parish. So once you have them in your parish, you have them forever. And applicants are interested in this type of housing need to show that they have a genuine connection to the parish. And this links in with the local authority policies about local connection criteria. There are a few different types of tenures, most commonly affordable rent, shared ownership and first homes, and often there can be a mix of these. And I just, you might be familiar already with the different types of tenures, but I'll just remind you. So there's the affordable rented, which is suitable for people that are unable to buy property on the open market or to afford local rents. Rents are charged at 50 to 80% of market rent, and the homes are managed by a housing association. Most commonly in Kent, there's a lot of schemes in Kent delivered by English Rural, and we'll hear a bit more from English Rural a bit later on about the successful schemes, the many successful schemes that they have delivered throughout the county. There's also shared ownership, and this provides an opportunity to own a share in a property, and the rent is paid to the housing association, and a deposit is required to achieve this. I just touched briefly on first homes. This is an opportunity for first-time buyers to purchase a property at a discounted rate, and there is a cap on this, so the maximum is 250,000. A deposit is also required, and some costs to cover the moving. And also it's important to mention the needs of older people. Our housing needs surveys include older people's housing needs. Very often older people express a wish to downsize on the open market, but they may want to or need to move to more suitable accommodation. And this could be with or without supports for their needs as they become a bit older. So really the question is, how can my parish become involved? And at Action with Communities in Rural Kent, we're here to help provide support and guidance, and the very best starting point is for a parish council to find out what the local housing need is in your parish, if there is a housing need that exists, which probably it does, and a survey can help establish that. The survey is formed of a survey form and a covering letter, which is sent out to each household in the parish. and local people are asked to fill out the survey form and return it to us. The form provides parishioners an opportunity to share their comments, tell us about their housing need. There's a whole section about housing need. And also for people to suggest small sites that they might have in mind that might be suitable as a rural exception site. It might be that you've had thoughts about this, that you've gone past somewhere that you think that might be suitable, and you don't really know how to take that forward. So this is an opportunity to maybe express some ideas around this area. The results are then shared with the local housing and planning departments, and then further support is available from me, the Rural Housing Enabler, to help identify sites, and also to help build a partnership between the parish council, the local authority and the housing association. So essentially we're here for support, advice and guidance with housing needs surveys, and then we can help pave the way with the process beyond that. Just going to show you some examples of some successful local needs housing schemes across Kent, many and varied, lots of different types of schemes. English will talk a little bit about some of their schemes, and if you're from any of these areas, hopefully you might recognise some of these photos. We are covering the whole of Kent, so we are trying to sort of show a variety of schemes all across the country. We've been going through loads of photos to find the different schemes that we've delivered over the last few years, and we have got quite a few. As you can see, they're really attractive properties. A lot of thought has been given to the design and to the setting, and obviously reflecting the local need. And I just wanted to show this last slide because in December 2019, a scheme was opened at Warehorn. The parish council and the local authority worked together in partnership with English Rural Housing Association to deliver this scheme. And you can see that Princess Anne came along and unveiled a plaque, and on the right of the screen you can see one of the people that has moved into the properties with her little girl there. So as I say, we're here for help, support, guidance, particularly with housing needs surveys. As I say, they're the very best starting point to establish local needs in your parish. My email address is there and my telephone number is there. And if you leave a message on that telephone, I promise I will get back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosemary. Oh, everyone hear me okay? Yes, thank you. Really interesting. Thank you, Rosemary Cara. To mention earlier, if you have any questions, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this session. But if anything occurs to you as we go along, please pop it into the chat box and we'll try and answer it at the end. So next up is Richard Deville, the Development Director from English Rural Housing Association, giving us the talk. Thanks. Richard.
Hello, over to me.
Yes,
Hi
over
there.
to you.
Hi there. I'm Richard Deville. I'm the new head of. I'm the new development director at English Rural Housing Association. I hope you didn't hear my dog barking before. Sorry, Rosemary. I was. I didn't. The postman came at the wrong time, and my dog started barking, so I had to get rid of him from my room. So apologies for that. Unfortunately, Alison Thompson, who lives and breathes rural affordable housing in Kent, is away on holiday at the moment. Otherwise, she'd have been here today. But today I want to give you a brief overview of English Rural Housing Association and our long-term housing partnerships in Kent. So if I can just share my screen. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've lost the screen, but I'm sure you can all see that.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. English Rural were formed in 1992, and we've currently got about 1,360 homes, over 160 villages across about 40 local authorities. In terms of Kent itself, we've got a very strong presence in Kent with 335 homes in 35 villages. So as you can see, it's about 25% of our overall stock, which gives an indication of what was said before by Rosemary about our real strong commitment we've got in Kent. Kent also forms the backbone of our development programme, because at the moment we've got 93 homes at various stages in our development programme, and that's across 11 villages. 80 of these homes are rented. We've also formed a strong and trusted long-standing partnerships with parish councils, local authorities and landowners. We're currently working very closely with Kent Housing Group, the Rural Housing Enablers, and we facilitate a lot of small housing developments with the parish councils fully involved from the outset. Of our current programme in Kent, 45 of the new homes are interestingly developed within the Sevenoaks District Council area, which really demonstrates our strong partnership with one particular local authority within Kent, and also their commitment to rural exception sites and rural housing in particular. So our first home in Kent, and we think it was actually the first home for English Rural, was Warehorn, which was one that was mentioned before by Rosemary. But this one, the first thing we did there was in 1995, and we developed 6 bungalows. But also the one that you've just seen, Princess Royal open, was a second scheme that we did in Warehorn, which was developed in 2019. So interestingly, when Princess Anne went there, she actually met one of the residents from the first scheme, which that she'd lived in since the start in, we believe, about 1995. The next scheme we're expecting to do in Kent is in Shepherdswell, which is a village near Dover, where we develop in 10 rented homes. That scheme in particular is interesting in the fact that it's our first community land trust scheme, where we're working closely with the village committee there. And that's been a scheme which has been championed from the outset by the village people and the community land trust there. It's also quite unique in that it's been acquired by from the church commissioners, and we're also working very closely with the parish council there. We're hoping to start that scheme in September. So that's in terms of a partnership that really demonstrates how we can work there with the local authority, the parish council, the community land trust, and even the church being involved. But it also gives you some idea. We've been working on that scheme since 2016. So it gives you an idea of the timescales involved in developing rural homes. They do take quite some time to actually get to even starting on site. And that's 6 years in the inception period. All of our homes are occupied by people with a proven local connection, which is so important for the sustainability of the rural communities. And as we said before, none of our homes are actually sold through right to buy. And even the shared ownership which we build are only sold up to 80%, which means that the homes remain as affordable in perpetuity, subject of course to any changes in government intervention on the extending right to buy, which is being discussed at the moment. I've now got a few images which Alison gave me of some of her probably her favourite schemes within Kent, which English Rural have developed over a number of years really, and I'll show you some of those schemes. Again, some of these schemes you may have seen pop up on Rosemary's slide. They look familiar. So this one was a scheme from 2006, so quite some time ago. Ash Grove in St Margaret's at Cliff, 14 homes built there. Interesting that you will see quite a lot of different design styles and local vernacular, this one being the flint and brick. So we do, every one of our schemes is very bespoke and quite in keeping with the area. Dudson Close in Smarden. Again, I think from what Alison Thompson said, she took me to this scheme and that was her favourite scheme, which she's built. Sunley Close in Godmersham, I did see that image pop up before, from 2011. Chandler's Meadow in Edgerton, again, that was built in 2011. 8 homes were built then, but we're also developing a further 8 homes at the moment, going through the planning process for a second phase in Edgerton. So it's nice to see that some of the villages were actually developing 2 schemes, so we're invited back again, which is a strong indication of how well the schemes have been accepted by the local community, that we've gone back for a second phase. Manicombe Close in Godnestone, 2012, 8 homes there. And Goldfield, that was the one which was mentioned before. So this was the most recent scheme which we did, which I think we're very proud of. So in summary, really, I'd like to really give a bit of a pitch for working with English Rural. We are a genuinely rural housing association, and we make our houses as affordable as possible, working with the local housing allowance as the rent basis. Our schemes are on a very small footprint. Again, that was mentioned earlier. Our average scheme size is only 6 houses. There are a few which are a bit bigger, up to 10. But in some cases, we even built 2 houses as an infill small scheme in a village. They are community-led. It's where the villagers invite us in, again, closely supported by the local authority and the Rural Housing Enabler. So we work closely with and for the local community. It's only people with a local connection to the village that can actually live in our homes, which is really important. Again, that was mentioned earlier, where it's important to people understanding straight away that these are going to be let to people who already got a connection to their village for sustainability reasons. We're award-winning design and construction, which you've seen from some of those images, and we're really proud of some of the houses that we build. Again, with the local vernacular and the materials wherever possible. Our architects are given clear steer to try and get these as close as they can do, to try and keep them really in keeping and look like they've been there and established for quite a few years. We also try to use local tradespeople and small companies to build our homes, which is really important to us. These are not built by the big national house builders. They're usually using companies which are close by, Kent companies. So it's providing work within the community and keeping money within the local economy. And as mentioned earlier, HRH Princess Royal is our patron, and she's a strong advocate for rural housing and really does help support us and the whole agenda for rural affordable housing. And as you've seen, does come along, opens some of our schemes and promotes rural housing in Kent and across the country wherever she can. So hopefully that's given you a quick flavour for what we do and how closely we are working and how integral Kent is to our development aspirations and to the future of English Rural, and we're so tied closely with Kent. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of English Rural. So thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank you very much, Richard. That was really interesting. Thank you. Right, now we're going to be hearing from Tessa O'Sullivan about community-led housing and the Kent Community Housing Hub. I think Tessa has the presentation for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to start on this first slide. So There we are. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about the community-led housing and the Kent Community Housing Hub, which is hosted by Action with Communities in Rural Kent. I manage both the hub and the Rural Housing Enabling Service. And the hub is really a natural extension of the Rural Housing Enabling Service, but it widens community involvement. It provides different types of housing, and it does also cover urban areas, although today we're focusing on rural areas, obviously. It began in 2020 with specific government funding for setting up community-led housing hubs. So we're an enabling service to support community-led housing groups to create the type of housing they need and want. We provide support from the very start of projects right through to the end. And we want communities to have a chance for real participation and influence over housing is developed in their areas. I think there's a lot of big developments going on around communities where they feel they don't really have much participation, and that perhaps some of the homes are not really, that are being built, are not really providing what's needed locally. So this is what we do. We're part of a network of hubs across the country. So that's great for us because we can share information, ideas, look at innovative schemes that are going on in other parts of the country. We provide a voice for community-led housing in Kent through awareness raising with the general public and other stakeholders. We provide advice and support to groups from very early stages, from setting up a group, choosing what type of community-led housing is appropriate for them, right through to development and beyond. And this includes technical advice service, where we can link groups up with consultants for professional advice on all aspects of community-led housing development, such as financial viability, planning consultancy, that kind of thing. We help to build networks through network meetings. So we hold online meetings for all the groups, community-led housing groups in Kent, to get together, and we try and have a speaker at those meetings on a sort of relevant subject, and also through our website and social media. We provide training, so we've provided training on things like finance for community land trusts, for co-housing, the Housing Association and community land trust partnerships, student housing co-ops, and also we've provided specific training for planning officers. And you can see some of those sessions are actually on our website, so you can see recordings of those websites on the Kent Community Housing Hub website. And the other thing is community engagement, and we recently secured funding for this work so that groups can learn to effectively engage with their wider community and other stakeholders. So that could be things like hosting events, creating and growing social media and digital presence, that kind of thing. And in fact, this weekend just gone, we financed a group to go to Brighton to visit the Bunker Cooperative, and my colleague accompanied them there. And so they were learning basically from Bunker, who have already developed their first housing co-op and are on to another one now. And we're also giving digital and social media help to a CLT so that they get more of a presence. So community-led housing has three main principles. That's open and meaningful community participation and consent. And that's very important, hence our community engagement offer that we can work with groups at the moment to do that. The community groups owns, manages, or has long-term stewardship of the homes in whichever way they decide. So they might not actually own the homes. The Shepherd's Well model, which Richard mentioned earlier, and I'm going to talk a bit more about, they actually own the land on which the homes are built. But that's their long-term stewardship. They don't own, they're not going to own the houses. The housing development is of true benefit to the local community, a specific group of people, or both, and these benefits should be protected in perpetuity. So affordable housing, for instance, should remain affordable. These are the four kind of main types of community-led housing, I would say, certainly what we're seeing. I'm going to talk a bit more about community land trusts in a minute, but co-housing, this is kind of going to be quite brief explanations, but co-housing is about people coming together to build a neighbourhood that embodies particular values. More often than not, the values are around living in a way that increases connectivity, reduces loneliness, the spirit of looking out for one another, and in a way that's environmentally conscious. People live in their own self-contained homes, but have shared outdoor spaces and often a common house for meeting each other and for shared activities. They're not really, the focus is not so much on affordable housing here, although they can provide some affordable units within co-housing schemes. Cooperatives, they're not-for-profit and democratic organisations run for and by their members, and they're developed out of a desire to do things differently and in a way that genuinely serves communities. They can be individual homes or shared housing. And we're seeing quite a few groups of people getting together who don't own their own homes at the moment, who are fed up with the private rental sector and feel that a cooperative is one way of providing themselves with the type of housing they need. So we've seen quite a few of those, hence that visit to Bunker Cooperative in Brighton that we organised at the weekend. Then there's self-builds, and they can be community-led when they're developed by a group coming together to create more affordable homes, for instance. But a co-housing scheme could be a self-build, so there's crossovers there. And then the self-help housing, which is really where empty properties are refurbished and brought back into use, and that often creates opportunities for training as well as providing accommodation at the end of it. So a community land trust, I'm going to talk more about Shepherd's Well. Community Land Trust is a not-for-profit organisation set up by community members to benefit a specific community. So that could be a village, as in the case of Shepherd's Well, or it could be a town or part of a town. And it could be a parish council that instigates a community land trust. It can own land and other property that's important to a community. The majority do provide affordable housing, but they can be used for other projects such as energy schemes or community shops. The property is held in perpetuity so that it remains affordable for the community. So currently no right to buy, no right to shared ownership, and any discount on full market values remains in discount for future buyers. And the Community Land Trust is open to membership to anyone in the community who supports its aim. So you get people from the community to join the Community Land Trust as a member for £1. And there are two main types of community land trusts. There's the standalone, where the CLT will raise all the finance, project manage the development, manage the homes once they're built. Or there's the partnership model with a housing association. And this is what Shepherd's Well have done, as Richard said earlier. And the advantages of this model are the CLT has the in-house development expertise of the housing association for the whole process, and the housing association can manage the homes once they're built. It's less financial risk for the CLT, and as a registered provider, the housing association can draw a grant from Homes England to help finance the build. So going back to Shepherd's Well, the images at the bottom left, they're 3 of the board members of the CLT on the site that is going to be developed. And there's a CGI image above that of what the homes will look like, along with a couple of images of the last public engagement event that they did. They are the first community land trust in Kent to get planning permission. It's a rural scheme. So yeah, we're very pleased we've actually worked with them for quite a long time. And I'll go on to just tell you a bit of history about this scheme and how it's happened. So it started as a local needs scheme, the type of scheme that Rosemary was talking about earlier. In 2013, we did a housing needs survey and a site search with them. Couldn't find a site. We looked at a number of sites, but none of the landowners were willing to sell any of the suitable ones. And the project came to a bit of a halt. Then in 2016, I put on an event on the Housing Association and CLT partnership model. And Shepherd's Well came along, they were interested, they decided that they would set up a community land trust in the hope that it would actually bring land forward, get more support. They became constituted as a community benefit society in 2017. The CLT itself isn't a legal entity, so you have to incorporate, and most CLTs become community benefit societies. They decided to partner with English Rural Housing Association, and the site search resumed. So we looked at sites we'd looked at before, found a couple of new ones. Alison actually from English Rural approached the church commissioners, and that was a site we had already looked at. And this time they were willing to sell, and we believe that is because they just supported the ideas of a community land trust. We updated the housing needs survey in 2020 because the other one was out of date, and that need verified that the need still existed. And planning permission was eventually secured in January 2022. And in this model, the community land trust will own the land, English Rural will develop and manage the homes. So English Rural own the homes, the CLT owns the land. In that way, they have the long-term stewardship that is one of those 3 key principles that I spoke about earlier. And this scheme will provide 10 affordable rented homes and 3 open market bungalows, which will help finance the affordable housing. And actually those, they're bungalows because when we did the housing needs survey, there's also that need for older owner occupiers wanting to downsize. And these homes, because they're open market, they can't be prioritised only for local people, but they're going to be prioritised for the first 12 weeks. And in fact, people have already registered an interest and they haven't actually gone on site yet. But the affordable homes will be just for local people with a connection to Shepherd's Well and Coldrick Parish. So that's that. We have got a separate website for the Kent Community Housing Hub where you can subscribe, get our newsletters and updates and see our training sessions. And we're always available if you want to have a chat about community-led housing. Just drop us an email. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing now. I'll hand over to Emma.
Thank you, Tessa. I'm sure people will have questions about community-led housing towards the end. Right, so now moving on to me. I'll be presenting highlights from the updated Kent Housing Protocol. Rosemary, can you share your mind, please?
Emma, I don't know about everybody else, but you're breaking up.
We've already heard mine. Emma. Am I?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit.
How am I doing now?
Rosemary, does everybody else hear Emma breaking up, or is it just
No, it is Emma. Emma's breaking up for me.
Okay.
Possibly.
Do you want to share her screen and then I'll try and go through what she was going to say?
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
You want to share her?
Okay, Tessa, you should be ready when you are.
Okay, so the rural housing, sorry, I'm going to have to improvise this a bit because Emma was the one who was going to talk about this, but I was involved with this update of the Rural Housing Protocol Guide to Developing Affordable Homes in Rural Communities. It's basically it went through the Kent Housing Group, and it's gone through the Kent Housing Group. It's published by the Kent Housing Group, but it provides a sort of step-by-step guide to how to develop affordable homes in rural communities and the different ways to do it. And some of you might have actually come to the launch of this in January last year. It's just been updated a bit to include first homes. I'm not sure if I can you go to the next slide, please, Rosemary? Okay, so yeah, it talks about how the new homes can be delivered, the various ways, including rural exception sites, which we've just spoken about now. The important role of landowners, how we need landowners who will be willing to part with land for this type of housing. For rural exception sites, it's not open, their value is not the same as for open market housing, so the values are much less lower. So sometimes that means relying on sort of local landowners being willing to part with land. And it is, yes, it's a series of fact sheets, basically. That is how the guide is presented. It's a series of fact sheets that go through the various stages of developing affordable rural housing, but it does also talk about Section 106 sites and not just rural exception sites. So it talks about who the parties that can be involved in development, and how the homes are allocated, and in the end, so who gets the homes, basically who lives in the homes at the end, and how they're protected. So protected from the right to buy, or the shared ownership going onto the open market. Is there another slide?
There were just 2 slides.
Okay, so sorry, Emma, I'm sure I haven't done that justice of what you were going to say, but you can see the Rural Housing Protocol through this link, and we will send it to you. We'll send you a link to the guide along with recording of this session. So hopefully, when we do the Q&A, Emma might have a better connection and can answer a bit more about it. So apologies for my presentation of what Emma was going to do, but hopefully you get the gist and you can view the guide yourself. Thanks, Rosemary. You could stop sharing now.
Okay.
Hopefully that was, I think that was okay. Apologies if I sound like
I think, Emma, sorry, you're still.
That, so, maybe it's best if Jessica.
We still can't hear you, Emma, so I think we just have to carry on. We'll go to the Q&A session now, I think. So if you have any questions, I don't know if there's any in the chat, but Councillor Pearton has had his hand up for a while. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you, Tessa. Yeah, I've heard all the stories and and you make it sound all very nice. Now, my experience of these affordable houses in my village is not the case. What they don't take into consideration is the infrastructure for a start to accommodate these houses, especially on the sewerage waste and things like this, and the water pipes underneath the ground, because we've had plenty of flooding and everything else. And what happens as well is you build these houses on these green fields and green sites, and with my village, all it does is puts more vehicles onto that village, choking up the village as a whole, especially where we got a bottleneck at the top of the village. And when lorries are delivering to these new houses as such, and it causes chaos in some villages. I'm not saying all, but in my village in particularly, it causes a chaos. And also, where you say that they have a connection to the village, that is not, in my experience, that has not always been the case. We have had people from outside the village move in, from all over Essex and many parts of the country, and that is just not true, that it is just for village connection people.
Okay,
in my experience.
I'm just wondering if this is actually a local needs development you're talking about. How big is it?
It is. It was affordable out where we've had 2 developments. We've had one at Jupp Court in School Lane, and the other one is at the back of the old Checkers pub on Greenbelt land, where it's been a bad experience for our village, and we wouldn't want to see any more, I'm afraid.
What village is it, sorry?
Village of Higham.
I am.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, what we've got to be careful of and mindful of, especially in this day and age, is that I quite agree with you, Tessa, with where that there are buildings that are already built that can be put back into use. That would be more better for this environment rather than keep building and building and building, because all we're doing is building on these greenfield sites on our green belt, and that in the future, a long time future plan is not good, because eventually if we keep going like we're going, we will be starving ourselves.
Could I come in, Tessa? Is that okay? So, so I see Paul Venning had put his hand up, but Councillor Pearton, so Brian Horton, I think I'm come from a slightly direction to you. I might bill myself as a housing enthusiast, and that is basically on the basis that I suspect that you have a home that meets your housing need, and you are happy, safe, and secure there. We deal with many people that are not in that condition. The rural sites tend to be smaller. It's very rare that you would build more than 10 or 20 homes, and often they're smaller than that. The planning requirements and the way that they're brought forward, certainly with Active Communities Rural Kent and ERA, which is the type of scheme we're talking about here, always involves very close dialogue with parish councils, the districts, and there are generally planning requirements on how the homes can be used and how they're used, not just initially, but in perpetuity. Now, if you've had a bad experience in your village, obviously we regret that, but we know that there are many communities that are enthusiastic about the schemes that respond to their local need. Now, we're not talking about large strategic sites or village extensions with this. This is very much about a set of homes that is aimed directly at responding to the need in that community. And that might be, I don't know if you've got children, grandchildren, parents, often the housing needs of people changes over time. And within a village envelope, there might not be suitable accommodation for some of the younger people that want to stay in the village, or potentially people that have had to move away for work or other things that want to come back. And I think sadly, if you've had a poor experience, we are sorry about that. But I think that what we've got to do is learn from that in terms of how we bring these other sites forward. And I think there are many examples where things have been done very positively. And a colleague from ERA before Richard spoke about the site where they did, I think, a site of 7 or 8, and they're going back to do a similar site again, very much based on that community, inviting them back because they've seen the benefits of what's come forward. But fully take on board the need for infrastructure. At Kent Housing Group, we are very, very passionate about an infrastructure first approach to development. So if you need investment in schools, doctors' surgeries, or more basic infrastructure, what goes in the ground, that needs to be coming forward first. But with the scale of development we're talking about here, it is very modest. It's not big strategic sites.
Yeah, in my experience, our sites have not been big. They've been 9 and 5, but our experience, we went along with the affordable housing because we thought it would be a good thing in our village, but it's turned out to be the opposite. And as regards to your presentation, when you first come on, that you want to keep your pubs open and the shops open, it's had the adverse effect on our village. We've had 2 pubs close in our village, even though we've had housing estates built and affordable housing built, and it's had the adverse effect.
I'm not sure that we can blame the housing for that, but I think that I need to pass back to Tessa, and I see that Paul Venning wants to come in.
Paul Venning.
Thanks very much, and congratulations all of you on some very insightful and useful information. I've got, and I thought that Brian's summary there of the need was spot on, so I'm not repeating that. I have a question, a couple of questions, probably more readily addressed to you, Richard, also known as Alison. But it's around the participation of English rural housing in the whole sort of financing piece and acquisition. And I'm just interested to know what happens if a parish council doesn't actually own the land, and you know, they don't see how they're going to be able to buy the land, and at this stage they might not have a landowner willing to sell. But I'd be interested in knowing, first of all, you know, what's the reality around English Rural Housing Association financing the project, including the land acquisition, and has anyone got any experience of developing affordable housing in the AONB?
Hello there. Hi there. In terms of us buying the land, that is what we do, and that's what we look for. Obviously, where we can get the parish council facilitating and pointing in the right direction of where the landowners are willing to sell the land, that's what we're looking for. But it's our job to try and facilitate that land acquisition stage. Obviously, it just helps where there is the rural housing enablers are really key to this as well, in terms of understanding the local area. But it's the parish council and the people there who really point us in the right direction of trying to find those lands, and they are fully participant all the way through in that land selection process as well. So, but it's our job to try and make that happen, and we will fund, in many cases, land acquisition earlier in the process, or where possible, it's purchasing the land, post planning application, post planning permissions. That's what generally happens.
And anyone got any experience of doing this in the AONB and AONB?
I know of schemes that have been developed in the AONB. Stockbury is one that comes to mind. It was just in the AONB, and you obviously get the support, hopefully, of those organisations, the AONB organisations locally, and they look at the design and you know, make sure that it's fits with the area. So I think in Stockbury it was about 6 homes. But it's not unheard of to develop in the AONB, but exception sites always have to be fairly close to the village centre, so you wouldn't get one, you know, or just on the edge of the village, so it wouldn't be stuck out in the AONB and, you know, in the middle of nowhere. It has to be within walking distance and that kind of thing. So the one in Stockbury you wouldn't really realise it's really literally just on the edge next to other houses.
That's very much indeed, very helpful.
Have you got the thing, because it's gone off?
Does anybody else have any questions at all? I can't see any hands up actually. No, nothing in the chat. Okay. Well, as I said, I don't know if Emma, do you want to try speaking again, Emma, and see if
someone suggested I turn my video off, so I've done that.
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, well, I could have done that then. But I think you did a really good job explaining about the rural housing protocol. You said more or less everything I would have said. I just probably would have just talked through a couple of the highlights, how to use it. I think it's just a really good starting point. If you're looking to research how to enable rural affordable housing, it's a really good start before you go and talk to your local authority, parish council, or the rural housing enabler. Have a flick through it. Like I said, it's fact sheets. It's really easy to use. It's really transparent.
It will do a lot of it.
So if nobody has any more questions, I think we'll be closing today.
Sorry, there does seem to be one more question actually from Gillian.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Gillian from Tunbridge and Morning Borough Council. I just wondered if you guys have had any, well, primarily maybe for English Rural this question, whether through your current sites or your working relationships with other registered providers, you've got any view on the likely impact of first homes, and also whether, you know, how you see first homes playing out on any of your sites or in the future.
Richard, are you able to?
Hi there. I see it as quite a different product at the moment, and because we're very much focused on the royal exception site process, you know, I'll see what happens, but I'm very optimistic that the royal exception site process will carry on, and there'll be very few of these sort of first homes opportunities that really come through in a lot of the villages. But because they're still determined by it's the developers who are trying to lead on these ones, and they're usually very small schemes anyway. That that's what's needed in the villages, and it just generally doesn't tick the boxes for the developers who are wanting to build the first homes.
Yeah,
So
sorry to interrupt. I
Yeah.
must admit this is an area that I need to look into further, but I think there's something in policy about a first homes rural exception
Yeah.
sites, and that's what I was just wondering whether anybody knows of that, or whether that's just an area that perhaps you're not intending to explore at the moment, and you'll stick with the more, in inverted commas, traditional rural exception sites with a mix of rented and other tenures.
That's what we're planning to do, and I think that because we've already got some sales products that can go in there without them being first homes. But I think first homes is generally more for a developer-led process. But at the moment, yeah, that's our expectation, is that we'll carry on doing the standard traditional rural exception site.
If I may, Gillian, I think there's a lot of work going on at the moment to try and understand the impact of first homes both, and there is, I think, a rural dimension that we don't properly fully understand yet. I'll drop you a note on some work that I've been pulling together with some other colleagues, and we're looking to do something for KHG members and also some of the developers and others in September that DHA planning are sponsoring. So I'll send you over some information on that, and hopefully that will be useful.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Thanks both. Interesting to know that, you know, English Rural's broad intentions at this stage, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to get an insight on their views on the first homes exception site angle, because I think we probably will get contact from some developers that perhaps look at that as a way of enabling development in rural areas, focusing on the first homes aspect. So Brian, I will look at your information when you send it through. Thank you.
It could well do, Gillian, but I really think the scale that they need to try and build at will make it it will put some of them off. So I'll be interested to see which ones actually come forward.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? Okay, I think it might be time to end the session. We're bang on time. So I'll let everyone go off and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you, everyone. Apologies for my bandwidth issues. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you, everyone. Bye.